Hello again, YouTube. It's Skylar. Welcome back to my face. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about why I'm trans. Alright, before we get into it, if you haven't done so, please remember to click the subscribe button down below. It actually really does help my channel out a lot and get my message out to more people so that more people can see it overall. Alright, so why am I trans? Well, a little bit of context here. Um, so, being trans is not a choice. Being trans is not something that you do. Being trans is something that you are. And I wanted to give a little bit of context illustrate a little story here before we go and dive in deep into this topic, because there's a lot of stuff that I wanted to go over, trans rights and the trans experience, and just generally talk about really why I'm trans in the first place. So recently I had a conversation with somebody, because I generally consider myself to be a pretty sociable person, so I talk to a lot of people, and just out and about, and had a conversation with somebody and started talking about this, that, and the other, and my experience in my life. I didn't bring up the fact that I was trans, and this person was very kind, and they genuinely had a sense that, they were deeply spiritual and deeply religious, and that they genuinely came from a place of wanting to help people and wanting to help the community and society and just all of that. And that's awesome. I love people that want to make the world a better place. So the reason that I'm talking about it today, though, is because in previous videos, I talk about transphobia and how transphobia in society has ripple effects that can't always be perceived until, everything is said and done. And so, while I was talking with this person, at some point they brought up a part of the Bible, and basically made it known to me that they believed that being trans is wrong, immoral, and considered a sin, and used other Bible verses to kind of help back up that point. And I was a little taken aback, because the topic of me being trans didn't even come up, but also because this person genuinely was coming from a place of trying to help and trying to be, trying to steer me in a direction that they thought was genuinely good for me. The problem is that when we live in a society where transphobia and not having access to information about trans people and not talking to trans people or existing with them, you end up with a situation where all people are ever told is that which they are, brought up around and grew up with, and, leaders of the community and newscasters and just, public broadcasting, and just when all everybody is ever told is just, we don't like trans people are bad, and that individual, whoever they may be, has only access to that kind of information, they start to form an identity around what that type of person is and that group of people is. And I wanted to bring this up because it really does show how much more I need to try to get my message out and try to let people know that trans rights are human rights, first off, and that being trans is something that is normal, natural, and an inherent and immutable characteristic of the human condition. It is not something that can be changed. It is not something that can be altered. It is just what it is. You are trans if you are trans, and that's it. And what kind of got to me, because I consider myself pretty thick-skinned at this point, being that I have now lived for over a decade in a rural community, which is over 70% registered Republicans. So it's by no means a liberal place that I live. It's actually very, very conservative. And so over the years, especially early on in my transition, back in 2016, 2017, I experienced a lot of transphobia. And I'm not going to lie, it was really bad what I went through. I've had people not treat me very well at all. So, as I am now, I consider myself to be pretty thick-skinned against, transphobic comments and rhetoric. This felt a little different, though, because not only was it transphobic, but the person that was saying this transphobic thing, they themselves genuinely believed that what they were doing was something that was supposed to be trying to help me. They genuinely wanted to see me succeed, and so they basically told me that my existence as a trans person is immoral and wrong, and essentially basically tell me that I should go back to living as the person that I was before I transitioned. So they asked me what my dead name was, which I did not give. But they told me, I see you, and this is somebody that's never met me until this conversation that we had, told me that I see you as the person you were before. Even though they had never had any experience or contact with me prior to this. And that actually hurt my feelings. Because he basically said, people like you cannot inherit the kingdom of God. Now, I'm not a religious person. I'm non-denominational. I don't adhere to any specific religious ideology or philosophy, but I am a very deeply spiritual person. I am a deeply, deeply spiritual person. And hearing somebody say that in the context of what their belief system is, knowing that they were genuinely they themselves trying to come from a place of both understanding and compassion in trying to help, that's kind of what made it hurt even more. Because I know that that type of rhetoric, that type of belief, that type of stigmatic dogma is something that was both learned and something that was imposed upon them throughout their life by a society that perpetuates misinformation and miseducation about trans people and the trans community overall, not to mention the LGBTQ plus community overall. But when you try to compare an immutable characteristic of the human condition to being something akin to stealing or abusing alcohol or any number of self-destructive behaviors, that hits different. And again, the thing that made it hurt more was the fact that this person genuinely thought that they were trying to help me. But in doing so, was sort of letting all the transphobia out all at once. And at one point after this, asked me, how many opportunities in your life do you feel that you've missed out on because you are trans? I cannot begin to tell you how deeply hurtful something like that sounds. Because not only as a trans person do I have no control over my gender identity, the fact that I am who I am and I was born trans through whatever mechanisms of biology and anything like that, I know very well how many opportunities and, business things and people and friendships, and I know how many things I've missed out on my life because I'm trans. And there's nothing that I can do about it, because being trans isn't a choice. To suggest that, well, it's, if you just weren't trans, things would be so much better. Yeah, I know. I know that. Every trans person knows that. Every trans person is very self-aware of the reality of the society that they live in and the things and the struggles that we have to go through just because we exist as who we are. That's not a gotcha. That's just kind of like a slap in the face. And again, I wouldn't even be bringing this up if not for the fact that, again, I think this person was genuinely trying to help me. But to circle it back to my original point, this is how far transphobia goes. It is insipid, and it tries to worm its way through and affect so many different things. I know this person has expressed these views to others. How many other people express those views? And it just keeps going on and perpetuating. And I'm not trying to call out this individual, because it's not an individual, it's society. I'm just using them as a microcosm for the whole situation of the world that we live in, which is a society that is based on misogyny, transphobia, and patriarchy. And anything that deviates from that norm is both seen as wrong, immoral, and needs to be corrected. There's a reason why, states and countries have banned what's called conversion therapy, which is a medical practice that tries to undo somebody's LGBTQ status. Now, I'm not a doctor, this isn't medical advice, but those practices are banned because they don't work, and they themselves are wrong. There's nothing that you need to change. Being trans is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong. Not only is it not immoral, but it shouldn't even be frowned upon at all. We should celebrate diversity. We should celebrate inclusion. And we should relish the fact that there are different people in different walks of life than others that have experiences that may not correlate exactly to them. Because that's how we grow as a species overall, and truly appreciate how much we've developed and come through in our culture and, our psychology, and having different perspectives on life is a wonderful thing, especially because there's nothing wrong with being trans. There's nothing wrong with being LGBTQ. It's these social stigmas that have been perpetuated by our society now for hundreds of years, despite the fact that trans people have always existed. Trans people have existed since the dawn of human civilization. We're not going anywhere, and we will continue to exist into the future forevermore. And one of the last points that I wanted to make is that it really shows you how real the trans experience is and how valid we actually are, because no matter how badly we're treated by society, no matter how badly we're pushed down and discriminated against and, denied job opportunities and, programs and everything, no matter how bad it gets, we still exist. And that's because you can't change the fact that you're trans. No matter how bad society tries to make it for us, thinking that if they do so, we'll just go away or untransition because, it's so hard being trans, so I guess I better not be trans now. That's not how it works. Nothing can ever change the fact that I'm trans. I was born trans, God made me trans, and I will always be trans until the day that I breathe my last breath. Nothing can ever change that. My soul is female. God made me trans. And that's it. So, without getting too emotional, I wanted to let everybody know that no matter how bad things might seem right now, not just in the US, but around the world with everything that's going on and the transphobia that perpetuates, I still genuinely believe that we are moving as a society overall in the correct direction. And that by helping spread education and information and resources about trans people and LGBT people in general, we can make the world a better place. We can help people, show them the way to them discovering that trans people are normal, there's nothing wrong with them, and that the things society has perpetuated to them have been lies, and it's been misinformation, and they've been deceived basically into believing hateful rhetoric that has no place in our society. A society should only be based on compassion and understanding. When you start to divide people, and when you start to say this group of people and that group of people, you've already lost. Society can only function if we come from a place of compassion and understanding. And the only way that we can get there is by recognizing the diversity and inclusion of every single person on this planet, and realize that some of us are not going to be straight, cisgender, or, a person of any particular race or ethnicity. There's so many different people, and that's okay. That's beautiful. We should celebrate the fact that there's different people. We should love the fact that there's so many different, experiences and cultures. That is something that we should found our, principles on, and not division and saying this group of people and that group of people, and then spread misinformation and set up multi-century, patriarchal, stigmatized dogma that perpetuates almost every aspect of society and only serves to function the role of pushing down small minorities of people so that, the ruling elite class can walk out the door with all the money while nobody's looking. So, stay hopeful, stay positive. Things will get better. Things are getting better. The world gets better every day because there are people that work day in and day out, tirelessly, unrelenting, to help make the world a better place for everybody. Not just trans people, not just LGBT people, but everybody. And we need to remember that at the end of the day, love is the only thing that keeps society going. We wouldn't have survived as a species if our society was based on bigotry, hate, and division. And so that's really all I had to say. I know that was a little bit of a longer video today, so I apologize if that's not what you're used to. I just kind of had a lot to say. And so with that said, if you enjoy my content, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing videos. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care and have a good one. Bye.